Hey guys, thanks for joining. Obviously, welcome to the first episode of my podcast series. Procrastinated a lot for a while in regards to the correct name for it. Eventually, we've settled for From Struggle to Strength, men's mental health podcast. I think it kind of encompasses everything that, in terms of my own journey that I went on, from being at rock bottom to getting back up, and living the life that I have now, and sharing my story across the last 7 or 8 years. And I've done numerous podcasts myself. I kind of felt that there was a bit of a gap that I feel that I could fill with my story, my lived experience. I think the struggle from struggle to strength kind of sums it all up. I've been doing podcasts over the last 18 months, obviously, and I've really enjoyed it, and I've searched for a lot of different people, a lot of other people's podcasts to do, especially down the mental health route. And ever since I've shared my story, obviously I've got a lot of feedback, and in terms of it being motivating, inspiring for other people. So it kind of gave me the bug to do it myself, and I've had numerous people lined up to do the podcast. I think there was only ever going to be one person that was going to be my first guest. I kind of want it to be quite impactful, and I think one of the things that is not spoken about a lot in regards to mental health problems, it's obviously more focused on the person that's going through the individual struggle itself, but it's not just them that deals with the mental health problem, the destructive cycle that person goes through as well. Obviously it affects their family and their social circle. So as much as I've had people say to me how good my story is, I think it's imperative that I am able to share my story through the eyes of my parents, and obviously specifically my dad. It wasn't just me that had the eating disorder for 10 years. And I think it's quite important, especially for parents that are dealing with whether their children have got eating disorders or whether they're dealing with their own individual mental health struggles. I think it's important to be able to showcase my dad's point of view, how he felt before, during and after it, as a way of showcasing how it impacts other people, and obviously how they felt, and giving the families a voice. I don't think that's something that is really showcased a lot in the recovery journey of the individual itself. So the purpose of the podcast is obviously to ask my dad his thoughts, his experiences, his feelings around my journey, and really our journey as well. So obviously it's a pleasure to have you on.
James, thank you.
Obviously people that know, people that are not aware of my story, I had an eating disorder for 10 years, from the age of 17 to 27. It started out as anorexia, and after 18 months it kind of manifested itself into bulimia. 6'4", and at my worst I was 5.5 stone, and at 21 my parents had to sign a do not resuscitate form due to my ill health, the high risk of going into cardiac arrest, and just obviously the potassium levels in my body were that low that they wouldn't have even attempted to revive me. And I was so hell-bent of being in this destructive cycle that even that wasn't the catalyst to change. I still lived with my eating disorder for 6 years after that played out. So it took a lot. It took a lot to get over it, and obviously it wasn't just me. Obviously, coming out the other side of it, you kind of realise that my own mental health journey it is kind of like a selfish thing. You don't have. It strips away everything about you. You don't have a personality. You don't have a sense of humour. You don't have friendships. You don't value the relationship you have with your parents. It just becomes all-consuming, and I think you do become not so much meaningfully and consciously, but you do become incredibly selfish, and you don't care how it affects other people because you're too wrapped up in your own head fighting them demons. And I think it's been something that we've spoken about many times over the years. I'm still learning. Every time I speak to my dad, I'm still learning of different like little nuggets of information. I was like, I didn't realise that. So like when people have asked me about like, are you ever recovered? I don't think you ever like fully recover. I think you just learn to cope. And I think hearing the little snippets from my dad, and I think even that like enlightens me, and I think it helps with my own like progression, learning about myself, and I think, and then learning how other people felt as well. I think it helps empower you and makes you far more aware of the impact of my mental health has on my family's mental health as well. So I think it's obviously that's the purpose of the podcast today. So yeah, obviously that the kind of structure of it will go through like early disorder, like before, during, and after, essentially.
Okay.
So obviously, like the first question that I wanted to really ask you was obviously going back very early on in regards to, obviously we've gone through the situation of being released from Charlton, and obviously there was the leaving school and starting college, and then with Nan passing away.
Yeah.
Obviously there was a lot going on at that time in the home life as well, in regards to like the building work, and life was just in a bit of turmoil, wasn't it? So
yeah,
I think the first question I think that would be like insightful for people would be, when was you aware that I had a problem that wasn't just like a stage I was going through? When did you realise that it was potentially an actual like disorder or a problem with food?
I mean, I guess. I guess it was sort of around the time where you had a problem with a foot or a leg, and it was a normal wound infection. I remember Mum taking you to hospital, and I'm not, because Mum dealt with it, and I was sort of on the fringe of it. I just remember you going to hospital, and I'm not sure if they medicated or what they prescribed. I remember you having tests, and then I remember you sort of, I don't know, I remember you losing weight, so you were amazingly sporty, and then because of the things that you've said, you'd gone from perhaps being not so sporty and losing interest, but then getting taller and slimmer.
Mm-hmm.
And the detail, I probably can't really put a finger on it. I do remember in terms of probably the anorexia was, I think, noticeable because of the change of shape,
mm-hmm.
your change of shape, and you maybe being a little bit more distant, but like puberty and all those things. So you were 17 and 17 or whatever, and it's that stuff is going on in your life, and I think we'd always had an open relationship, and if you'd have had any issues, I would have hoped you would have spoken to me about them, but you sort of, you hadn't, and you didn't, and it was just like, well, whatever's going on with James, maybe it's just going on, it's just you becoming an adult. I wasn't quite sure.
I think that's obviously, I think when I've spoken about it in the past, I think I got that positive like reinforcement from my friends, because they obviously saw it at the time. It was kind of like the puberty stage kind of masked the initial, like probably 6 months of the I guess technically being diagnosed as anorexia. Obviously I'd had that routine from football, and obviously I used to eat McDonald's on the way home every Wednesday from training from Charlton, and obviously I was in that routine of food, but my routine from football stopped. And it was like looking back at some of the pictures when I was first year of A-levels, I'd obviously put on weight. Because obviously the PT in me now, it's almost like the exercise decreased, but the food stayed the same. Ergo, there was a big calorie surplus there, and obviously I'm not special. You end up putting on weight, obviously, so I looked a lot different. Although I think you said you wasn't really aware of that. I think I was more so than ever, and obviously that kind of the running and the restriction of food, I say, coincided with me going from 5'9", 5'10" to like 6'4". So naturally in and out, and obviously like you said, we've always been open. We've always had a open relationship about anything, like football, school, if there are any issues with school or people that I didn't like, you'd always be. Oh, I always say that I was a mummy's boy, but I think it's the same. I was just a mummy and daddy's boy. I think that was the easiest way.
I think you were just you were a child that grew up. I'd like to think in a happy environment and always wanted to please. You just wanted to make people like you. You were personable, and in that change was it you just getting older and going through puberty and changing, or was it something else changing you? And
I think that's obviously what it was. I think whereas before I didn't understand what was going on. I think like I've explained it, like I didn't know what an eating disorder was. Obviously there was no one in the family that had it. No. It wasn't on telly. It was just obviously the things that were going on in my head at the time, and that feeling of failing, of failing you for the football, and failing my friends because of school. And again, hindsight and with a different mindset, that isn't real, but that's how I felt. I felt like there was all this effort was put into me for the football background, and at the end of the day there was nothing to show for it. And like obviously with Nan as well, like not being able to help her, but the doctors couldn't even help her.
So, no. I mean, that was an amazing load to take on, because that wasn't down to you. It wasn't down. The illness wasn't down to you. Any support or making it better wasn't down to you. It was just an incredible thing that you just took on your shoulders and felt responsibility for.
I think it was obviously the fact that obviously like mum's dad, like granddad. Obviously when he passed away, it was my first year of grammar school. So I was 1999. I was in year 7, so I was 11, and obviously like we wasn't there all the time, was we? We'd go and see him in hospital, and when he did come down, so you could see that he wasn't very well. But there was that, without being rude or disrespectful, it was kind of like the outside, out of mind. He wasn't there all the time.
It wasn't in your face constantly.
No, and obviously being at college, it was like 2.5 days a week. I wasn't there all the time, so I didn't have that ongoing distraction. And obviously it was like, it was a taboo subject. Like obviously, this isn't nothing about mum, but obviously mum had obviously already lost her dad, and she was losing a mum, and it was like talking to her. It was such an emotional time. But obviously, it was like I couldn't help mum, and I couldn't help Nan, and I think it was that reinforcement of like I can't do anything right at this like 18-month. Like 2-year period, there was nothing I could do to help. So what's the point? What's my worth? Like I can't do anything.
Yeah, but that judgment was you. Yeah, you were judging yourself, because no one else was judging you, because no one else held you responsible for any of that. And so I think the sort of anorexia wasn't quite so noticeable, and I think the you're losing weight, you're becoming taller, and all that was happening around the same time. And I think that wasn't so noticeable that way. That was either me not being observant and noticing it, but I think the bulimia, because of the change in the routine, I suppose, that we would, in terms of meals, if we were at home, so evening meal would definitely be the case, wouldn't it? So evening meal, for as long as I can remember, would be, we would sit down, have an evening meal, and we'd have a chat about what went on and things like that. And then what becomes apparent, probably not as early as it could have been to us, or maybe should have been, was after every meal you just disappeared. And you disappeared for a period of time, which we subsequently realised was whatever you're eating, you're now getting rid of. And wherever we were, if we were at home, if we were out, then that would be the norm, wouldn't it? You'd no sooner finish your meal, and you'd put your knife and fork or your spoon, and the moment you finished your meal, then you disappeared for a period of time. And that became, I think that became apparent that things weren't right, weren't normal, and then. I think not. So when was that noticeable? Probably if you were 17, you were probably 19 now, I'm thinking that was it around that
I think
time?
I said it was about, it's very hard to try and pinpoint like the timelines of everything, but like I said, it was between like a year and 18 months of the anorexia. And it was obviously the restrictive nature, the weighing of all the food out and the exercise, and it was like the rebellion against it. I was so tired and I was so hungry all the time. And obviously like the switch from the restricting to the binging was almost like it was like some form of release for me.
Right.
And obviously that's obviously where, like you said, it isolated me even more. I think that probably leads into like the next question that I had was about obviously the like your, in terms of like your point of view, like your personal experience, where that probably more so if we're talking about the bulimia, then that moment of realization when it was like, shit, like what, he's got a problem, like what, how did you, when it was like abundantly clear, I'm guessing it was like how do you raise it? What was your thought process about challenging me? And
well, I think somehow I can't remember the detail, but somehow we would have got round to a discussion about why you're leaving the table, James. Why do you not stay with us? Why do you disappear? And I think there probably was a question about, are you okay? Is there anything wrong? And I don't think well, you would have just denied there was anything wrong.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things that you just need to go to the toilet, and that was, you just have to go to the toilet after every single meal. I think because it went on for such a long time, it's hard to say how it evolved and what stage it was at. But I just remember in terms of, you were very regimented, and we had to do stuff. And meals had to be at a particular time, and it had to be, if we were going somewhere, it had to be in a particular sequence, that you could only do things when you wanted to do them. You said earlier about being selfish, and I think you were. And that's sort of difficult. It's difficult because it's like, well, what's going on, and just the lack of knowledge, I think, lack of awareness, which I think is why you're doing what you're doing, which is amazing. That the lack of awareness, that if you Google these behaviours, I mean, I didn't know anyone personally ever that had an eating disorder, and I think Karen Carpenter of the Carpenters was the only person around that time that I knew,
celebrity,
had an eating disorder and subsequently died from it. So although I didn't have any real knowledge of it, I knew of it, and I knew that it was potentially a killer, that if it got out of hand, that it could take your life. And I just sort of remember it being a really long period of time where nothing was really happening. And I don't know if that was the National Health Service, not to criticise them, whether it's a GP, National Health Service, or there was, I don't know what it was, whether there was an apathy or just a lack of understanding, a lack of knowledge, awareness on their part, because no one seemed to be able to say, okay, this is what it is, and this is what we need to do, and this is the roadmap, and then the outcome with no guarantees will be this. And I don't know, because you would have been the one talking to the doctors and that, if what those conversations were like, I don't know.
Yeah, in terms of I remember there being like the weekly visits, there was like the weekly weigh-ins,
right?
And obviously that was the norm back then. And obviously I guess it's probably done a little bit differently now, because it'd be far more like emotional support and potential like therapy than rather like, right, how are we doing this week? Jump on the scales.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember. I'm sure you can remember this as well, the bottles of water I used to have in my car. Yeah. So it was a way of manipulating the scales. So I knew I would turn up at the appointment, and I would literally drink as much of water I could. So we're talking, I'd easily drink a bottle before going in, so it's at least 2 litres of water. And I never actually like weighed myself and drunk the water and to see how much it was. All I was trying to do was to try and pull the wool out of the eyes of the doctor. Because obviously they're testing weight, they're not testing water. It's very hard to. So yeah, obviously I was. You said about how I became like reserved and distant. That's how I then learned to become like a compulsive liar. Yeah, it's like the doctors are like, yeah, no, it's fine. Like things aren't. I wouldn't sugarcoat it in a way like, no, I'm fine. Like it's absolutely fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with me. But I would do it in a way that it wouldn't really draw alarm bells.
I think for us, because we didn't know, so Mum and I didn't understand, didn't know what we were going through, didn't know what would help, and you not seeming to accept that there was an issue or you had a problem, and that was hard because life had changed so much, and it was, you were. In terms of behaviour, you'd leave the table, but then if you recall, we lived in a house with we didn't have mains drainage. And
I spoke about that on a podcast previously, so that was pretty much the one of the first stages of realisation that other people knew.
Right, I mean, we had a septic tank, a cesspit at the end of the garden, and we had manhole covers, if you remember, and it'd be like, well, the toilet's blocked, what's going on? And I'd lift the manhole cover up and it would just explode, not with sewage as you would imagine, but with vomit, it was just like unbelievable. So
I remember, I can still remember it. I can still remember like when the drain would be overflow, you'd have to get a bucket and
I had rods. We bought rods.
Yeah, and I remember like with the hose, and I remember looking to the balcony window at the top of the stairs at the old house. So the big windows, and it was like peering like through the curtain, and it was just like, fucking hell, like because it is like you become like so secretive, you don't want anyone to know your shit, and then it's like I can't hide that anymore. And it wasn't like I'm clever when it comes to stuff, and you learn to become like extremely clever and conniving. That's the word.
Yeah.
And it was it was one of the things that I didn't factor in.
But if you remember, your response to that was, and then we'd have guys around to empty the tank at the end.
So someone mentioned it, didn't they?
And they said someone here is unwell. Someone here is ill. And I think your response to that wasn't to then realise that you had a problem, but it was like to sick in a bag. And the black bags, there was solution. Millions of bags were sick, and they were just like
everywhere.
And on top of, I guess at some point you put them on the roof outside your bedroom window, and they just mounted up. It was like the dustbin bin hadn't been for months, and there was all these bags, but it wasn't rubbish; it was vomit. And, and that was awful.
I think the embarrassment.
Well,
I'm sure there'd be.
There was, because in the village, we lived in a village, didn't we? And occasionally you'd see a black bag, and the black bag would be maybe along the road or outside, or you probably thought you'd disposed of it but hadn't, and then it's like there's a bag of rubbish or a bag of whatever, and then if someone opened it, it was just horrendous. It was just horrendous that it's full of sick, and I think then, like you said, I think probably wherever the border lines were, they were just then crossed. And in terms of lying, and you were going to go to work, and you did this job, and you went out of the house, and then you didn't probably go to the destination, and you just did other things, and it was just like I think an awful period, and without really any hope or any suspicion on our part that things would improve. And I think you were referred to, I think, to a beat meeting. Is that the acronym? A Maidstone Hospital. It was for, I think it was as much of families as it was, or maybe it was mainly families.
I think initially it was a support group, wasn't it? And obviously, I think you and Mum went initially.
And we went along, and you were there. We went along, and there was a number of people in the room. we went for an understanding and an education, a bit of education support for you, in the hope that that was part of a process to get better. And we went there with I don't know about expectation, but with hope anyway.
I think that was one of the things. It's something that we've spoken about before. Like my dad is very much you're a solutions person, aren't you? It's like a problem solver.
Yeah.
And it's something that you've always instilled in me. That it's like if you know how to do it, do it. If you don't know how to do it, get someone else to do it. And then you sort of see that trying to find. I guess it's kind of like the person that I'm trying to become now. Trying to find that
we were desperate for that person. We were desperate for someone to say, I don't know, say it's going to be all right, but to give us some hope. And
someone in my shoes has come out the other end. Yeah. And whatever you're going through, you think, keep going and do this, and then if you do this and you do this in this way, then the outcome will be like this, and you just hope. We went hoping and thinking that we'd come away with that. Yeah.
And we came away feeling worse than we went, and it was because there were other people there, probably looking worse than you were, and you were looking really poorly. And
there was still no men there, was there?
No. And there were bright people. There were people with, professional people, accountants, lawyers.
Like I remember,
women that had families and had every reason to want to beat
their profession,
to want to beat the problem, and educated people. And you think, well, why can't you see what you're doing? And
but I think that's almost like a message in itself. It's so indiscriminate. It doesn't give a toss what you've got. In terms of you could already be at rock bottom. You could be born into poverty. You could be born into riches. And it doesn't care. There's no. It doesn't prey on a particular person, and it's just how it manifests itself into people's into their routine, into their mindset. It's obviously something that there is no. Yeah, it doesn't cherry pick people. It just picks them indiscriminately. I think that's the
and so we went looking for hope, and we came away with feeling of sort of helplessness and hopelessness. That wasn't really the answer. So if that's not the answer, where do you go from there? And it was just, I think, more of the same. It was just sort of endless. And I don't know if you remember that we had the works done. We had an extension built for Nan to come and live with us, and then so we had the sort of house. We had a 2-bedroom house bolted on the side of the house, didn't we? And you sort of owned the kitchen, so no one could really go into the kitchen. You'd always be in there doing stuff, and then I'd get up in the morning, and if you were up, or you hadn't, maybe you were up because you hadn't gone to bed, I don't know. And then you'd have the hob on. We had a gas burner on it. We had the hob on, and it was like a sauna. It was so hot. We had the heating turned right up.
I don't remember that.
And then the hob on, and it was like you were up because you were cold, and probably no blood, no circulation. You were cold, and it was just like, I'm glad it wasn't the energy crisis.
God, can you imagine that? You're about to sell up, and
So that was just like, well, this obviously is a riot, but when Mum and I, so by then you were just. I said a recluse recently, and I think
I've used hermit. So
So you just sort of withdrawn from
society.
Yeah, from society, and then we would go wherever we went, and we'd go to a restaurant. We're not really into going to pubs, but we'd go to a restaurant, or we'd go out somewhere to a theatre. But mainly sort of restaurants was. I remember going to the Oxford Tower in London one afternoon evening, and there was just a group of youngsters. There was a group of guys, and they were having a laugh, and there was a group of girls, and then there were couples, and it was just like that should be James. If we said that once, we said it so many times. And where was James?
I felt that too. I think when I see social media wasn't as there was Facebook, wasn't there? There wasn't really Instagram or like a Snapchat, so there was obviously Facebook, and obviously I'd lost touch with a lot of my friends from school because of it. See what I said it in me. In talking about my own story, that was just like, "Are you coming out this week? No. You coming out this week? No, I'm right." And then it got to the point where I just ignored them. It was like, there's no point asking him. He's not coming out.
No, I get that. I mean, in terms of I think love is unconditional, and but if it wasn't your son or someone that you love desperately, you'd have just given up, because it's like, you know what, they're too hard work. It's if you're going to do something, it's always on your terms. Then I'm not going to do it now because it didn't suit, and I get why people. For you it must have been even more isolating, but I get why people would be like, you know what, I won't ask him again because it's just too difficult.
And I think that's obviously that was mum's. I've mentioned it before. Obviously, like it was like good cop, bad cop. That would be yours and mum's approach, and obviously mum's. I think I needed it. I think although you didn't know what to do, I think you and mum, the way that the roles that you asserted or that you assigned yourself, I think was I couldn't have had two mums.
No.
Because I would have potentially gone somewhere, run away, or again, where would I have gone? Fuck knows where. But it would have been so much more of a battle. But then if I had people that were potentially like I'm not going to say you were soft, you were incredibly supportive. But if I didn't have that again, I needed it. But mum on me like a hawk, and it was like that. I in hindsight, I needed it. But obviously, I remember mum saying to me, like, "I love you because you're my son, but I hate who you are as a person."
I mean that.
And it was like
that was probably. I don't know if you remember, but growing up, you would say
I spoke about
divorce.
This.
Like your friends have been through divorces, and you'd hate your parents to separate, and it's absolutely ironic that the biggest
strain on your marriage.
Was you.
I think obviously that was going to be one of my questions was obviously going to be in terms of like I was living my life however I wanted to, as divisive as it was, but in terms of like obviously you were still running the business, you still obviously had like your relationship with mum. There was Nick as well, obviously like my brother, and obviously Nan, your mum was. She was okay.
Well, she had so then Nanny Kit was obviously Nan had passed away, but Nanny Pat she was just going through a tough time in her late noughties, and mentally, psychologically, she was having problems, just the stresses of life, I think, and then she had and Nanny Pat would never really understand a conversation, so she'd be an interpretation of it. And she said that she'd been to the hospital because they'd had a problem with a kidney, and they found that she had an aneurysm. It was a main, I think it's like an aorta, but it was in an artery coming up
supplying
in the stomach somewhere, and it's where the main artery thins. And it can bloom and it can burst, and if it bursts, then that's curtains. You can't get to hospital and have it repaired. So Nan was saying that she was going to have to go into hospital. She was going to have an operation. She's going to die. And I was like, well, Mum, that can't be right, because they won't be operating on you if you're going to die. That it may be a risk that you'll die, and that was. I guess around 2010, because in 2010, and then so in 2010, my worries were. In 2010, my worries were, I can't remember if that was a period of time in the business when we had those bad debts. There was the mechanical electrical contractors, and two went bust in the same year, and then it was about 50 grand worth of bad debts, and there was stuff with work. There was Nan saying that, and then you being unwell, and then Mum, me witnessing stuff that I witnessed. So me, the sick down the manhole, the black bags, and then Mum saying, James has lied about this, or James has lied about that, or this is wrong, or that's wrong, or this is missing. You know, stuff had been taken from home, and it's like, well, I'm sure it was there, now it isn't. And if you witness something and you obviously know it's there, and you try and
retrace your steps, or
either it's like, well, it was there, so is it somewhere else? You start searching for things that were there and then they're not, or you start questioning. You start sort of you start questioning yourself, as in, what have I done? This is me as a person. What have I done that could have contributed to what you're going through? What experience have you been through that has resulted in it? And because we didn't know anything about really an eating disorder, we didn't know much about mental health, but we knew only by what we'd seen or read or heard about trauma. So had something really fucking awful in your life happened that we didn't know about, that was a trigger for you. So you start trying to think about, well, when could that have been? Was it at football? We spent a lot of time at football, sort of time with other people, with men, and it's like, well, God, did something happen? Was it a bullying thing? Was it something that I did? I remember being a manager, and I was, as in the whatever age group you lads were. And because you were so good, you were like amazing. I was probably too critical, I thought. So did I go too far? Was I a contributing factor? So I think when all this stuff is going on, you just sort of think, it's hard to solve it, and it's hard to stay focused on it because you've got so much shit you have to deal with. But then it just sort of, I remember, to 2010, I think, where was probably the deepest, the deepest or greatest worry. I think when Nell went in to have her operation in the London hospital in London, so Whitechapel, and she had the op, and I remember I went there that evening. And she was, the op had gone okay, but she had difficulties, and she was on a life support machine. And I left there later that evening, and then went to Maidstone Hospital where you were, and you were in you were in a hospital bed, and Dad had dinner resuscitated with her, and as part of the discussion, and it was like, oh my God, in one night or 1 week, you can lose your mum, and you can lose your son, and that was just like, you don't make a decision, but you're trying to, you're both in the best place you think, as in, them was being cared for, and you were being cared for, and you just want, when they talk about your potassium levels, and they couldn't restart you or kickstart you if if your heart stopped, and it was just like, what is it that you need to be aware of the problem, and I think that's just like an incredible painful period, and I think there's an element of anger as well, that and that was the thing. Mum was angry that you couldn't listen or wouldn't listen, and you wouldn't make it better, and I think I got that. I was sort of angry, and then looking at, I think when he was in the eating disorder unit, and we sat in there with you. As a visitor, and it was a bit like, Christ, you're taking it seriously now, and I remember sitting there, and it was like a parents' evening, I think, at school. We'd been there when you were, at parents' evening, and it'd be like, James has done this, and James has done that, and James is really good at this, and in the eating disorder clinic, when I was like, James has said this, and James has done that, and James probably isn't ready yet to get better. And you're thinking like, well, he's in the place where you can make it better, and you're now saying that it's up to James. It's up to James to decide. And I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
What the fuck? You know,
he's here to make.
Yeah. You've got to do whatever you've got to do, and that conversation was just like unbelievable. I think it was unbelievable that they were saying, yeah, it's up to James, and if he's not ready, then it's not the time. And Jeff's studying that thing the other day which he posted, and
about the Hope Virgos.
And then I read about he visited a mental health unit because his friend's daughter was diagnosed and was in having treatment, and it was being in a not that he was there, but in a concentration camp where you've seen these skeletons, people that are barely alive, and that was what we saw, and that was you in that place, and I think another vivid memory from that was, and I think because as you said, you're a bright guy, you would tell people what they want to hear, and you did that with the doctors, and you did it probably with everybody at that time, and then I think because they sort of called you out and said that James had said this or done that, and he didn't respond to this, and he's not ready. And I just remember you sitting in a chair in a lounge area with a blanket, and you were rocking backwards and forwards, and it was like something out of one flow of the cuckoo's nest. It was just like, Christ, how do you get better from there? And her life was really difficult, I think, because Nick during all that time was not forgotten, but he was up at uni and he missed a lot of it.
I think there's stuff obviously I haven't really spoken in a lot of detail with Nick over the years about it, but I think the stuff that I've done over the last year in regards to sharing my story and raising the profile about obviously the guys get eating disorders too, I think it shocked him because he was hundreds of miles away from it. But I think that's probably good because I know it sounds horrible, but at least it was one less person to be involved in my shit. You wouldn't want him to have had his studies compromised and his job compromised and his relationships compromised because of me. Because I say at that time I was so. I think it's just like the in denial thing. I think, like you said, it was such a. It's hard to go back and actually put myself in that mindset, but it was like I said, it was like this feeling of, especially in the eating disorder unit. I think that although obviously I still wasn't, I was reluctant for help, but I think even like the food that I was eating, obviously you were being monitored 24/7. So the time that I was there, so obviously everything I was eating, you wasn't allowed to leave, you wasn't allowed to go to the toilet. So it was like over that, was it like a 4 or 5 month period that I was there as a day patient? Again, I was the only guy. There couldn't be mixed sex within the unit. I think that it helps in regards to cognitively, like my brain almost coming back to life. Is the easiest way I can describe it. And it was kind of like I saw, although I was reluctant to change, I had this, I'm going to say epiphany, but I probably saw myself how everybody else saw me. And I think that was for the first time for my whole of my eating disorder.
So the thing what you didn't do, and maybe it doesn't take away what you didn't do was tell us.
No.
So we didn't know. So all we knew, there was this black hole, slippery slope that you were going down.
Circle in the drain.
And it was like, we did, if you, whatever that moment was that you thought, I'm bored or whatever it was, that I think you didn't share it. we remember going to family counselling, so we'd go to counselling with the, I remember this, she was a really attractive woman at the counselling.
I bet Mum loved that.
Yeah, that was the reason. Mum's take on that was.
Let's get another doctor. Yeah, I bet it was.
Mum's take on that was, yeah.
She's great. Yeah.
James isn't listening. Yeah. Mum was like, I can't do this. And after a few meetings, Mum was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't come to this meeting anymore. But it made me smile. Yeah, it makes me smile today when you go that. She was a really attractive woman, probably in her 20s, I would imagine, not much older. And Mum thought that was the reason why I went, but Mum couldn't get. And she said this. I forgot the name, but she said to me, "Why are you working so hard when it's James's problem?" And Mum got that. Mum got that. Well, why are you working so hard when it's James's problem? And James isn't. If you'd realised by then or soon after, but you hadn't said. So Mum was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm not coming to these meetings anymore. And all that did was drive a bigger wedge between Mum and I as to how this was going to pan out and what needed to happen. And what it probably set me off on was if the NHS can't come up with a solution or pathway, that there must be another way. And maybe you did it just to either please me or shut me up or whatever, but I think you saw psychiatrists, hypnotists, you saw at least 2 hypnotists, a sports psychologist, and it was just, that didn't work, let's try this, that didn't work, let's try that hasn't worked, let's try something else. And Mum was like, well, why to go into me, why are you doing all that? And that was probably 2020 and 2021, and then got through that intensive care after a couple of months, I think, all in, and then she started her recovery. And then my sister was diagnosed with breast cancer, if you remember. That was 2011. So my biggest fears then was, my biggest fear about you was shared with Nan, less so, but Tricia, my sister, and what she was going through. And the business was sort of doing a little bit better, but it just seemed that there was these 4 things, and it was a bit like the Premiership. It's like who's going to qualify for Europe? Which of those 4 things are going to lead the table? And you led it mostly. It was mostly about my biggest fear always. I think you know that was
finding me.
Finding you. It was such a relief that I would see you in the morning, or you'd be there, or wake up, or you'd just be there. It doesn't matter what was going on, you were just alive, and that was just such a relief. And that is, you say about being selfish, that is such a selfish thing to put someone through. And I know you couldn't see it, and you couldn't, but to know someone's biggest fear is that, and you could have changed it, but the ED was so big in your life that everything else didn't matter.
No.
And that was I think a tough thing. And
I think that just sums up the complete and utter desperation, and the only thing you wanted was just for me to be alive. It wasn't about me you being happy, you having a life, you having you and Mum's relationship. It was just as long as he wakes up every day. That's such a you take it for granted when you've got your health. I think in terms of as a basic require that's it. I just want you to wake up. I think it just shows how desperate. And
I don't know if you remember, there was one night when, or in the middle of the night, I think. So we were living in Leeds, and Mum and I heard a bang, and we went out onto the landing, and you passed out on the landing. You were on the landing, lying there.
There was plenty of times when that happened, and I never told you.
But I think on that, because that occasion, I remember Mum said James has passed out, whatever, I don't know. And I had your head in my lap. And Mum was on the phone she dialed 999 and we were talking to the ambulance or hospital people, whoever it was. And then you regained consciousness, and I think that they said, "Are you conscious?" And I think they spoke to you, and I think in the end, you didn't even go to hospital, and it was like,
I'm fine.
Yeah, and that was, blatantly you wasn't fine, and it was that period when, you maybe hadn't, or seemingly hadn't turned the corner, hadn't admitted that you had an issue, and you weren't going to change it because you wanted to change it. You were just doing stuff to shut me up, seemingly.
I think obviously it was after the eating disorder unit. I think it was the way that I've tried to explain it to other people is like there were like almost like levels of acceptance, in terms of like I accepted probably for the first time. So we're talking 4 years in, 2010, 2011.
Yeah.
So 22. So from like 17 up until 22, it was like, no, I've got a problem. Like I'll stop tomorrow or whatever. I think that it was the realization after obviously having to have, obviously the thing that happened in hospital with the do not resuscitate, that wasn't you'd think that'd be a wake up call or a big like slap in the face, like sort your shit out. Like that wasn't. But I think the eating, that's as simple as that. It was the eating and not bringing it back up, and obviously it kind of helped. It made me feel a little bit more alert, awake, and we're talking minuscule improvements. But obviously, when you're not eating anything and then you're eating a little bit, and you're keeping it down, it does kind of. I say like it's not even the rose tinted glasses. It was also like the eating disorder glasses were kind of. Like one of the visors were taken off, and I kind of saw myself for how I was, and it was like this realization is like, shit, I can't actually change this myself. I can't. But then it was like the battle of, like I've explained before, it was like I have no friends, I have no job, I have no life. Like the relationship with you and Mum is shit. And obviously I was doing everything that is victim mentality. Like, so what do you do with the victim mentality? You latch onto the one thing you've got. What's the one thing I had? My eating disorder. So it was like this like the Stockholm syndrome, as in like, if I get rid of it, I've got nothing. So I almost like, I know I need to change, but I can't because I've got nothing else. That was kind of the thing in my head. So it was obviously like I was more receptive to help. Like I wanted help. I just didn't know what to do, how to do it. And that's obviously why I saw, like you said, like you class it as like alternative therapy methods, wouldn't you? They're not like mainstream. Mainstream things.
No. But I think that was desperation, maybe, on my part, because what we were going down traditional, conventional route, if there is the conventional route, as in
hospital doctors,
and they were like, James isn't prepared to change.
Come back when he's ready.
Well, when's that? When Jeff Stelling said, didn't he? You're not thin enough yet, and then you come back, and then what they're going to do is palliative care.
You're too thin now. Yeah.
And that was, he vocalised that only a week ago, whenever it was. But that was in my head that hasn't worked. So let's try something else, and let's keep trying something else until something drops, until something triggers. And if there was an individual thing, I don't know, but if it was a collective thing, whatever caused you to.
I think, like I said, I think it was like the initial steps or sparks of recovery was from the eating disorder unit, and I think the biggest help was Ash Lawrence, the sports psychologist. I said like he's obviously you know Ash, and he's very much a tough love. It was probably that he's very much like instead of it being like, oh, how did it start and what, like, how did you feel and what, and it was like, you've got it, how do you want to get rid of it? It was very much like an action. He's an action man. It was like we know you've got it, you've got it. How are you going to get rid of it? And that was it. And obviously the saying that obviously I still live by today is like whatever your goal is in life, whatever you want to achieve is what you're about to do. You're going to get closer to it, push further away. And it's like that. he just said that in one of our like therapy sessions, and we're probably what 10 years plus since having their meetings, and it's still something that I apply like every day. And it's just like it's a big thing that I use to help other people.
And we are in eternal death.
To get
you.
Yeah, and obviously like, we've like dipped into conversations since obviously he said about like how good it is to see like the recovery like that I've made and stuff, and obviously it is. You get, I think I don't know when the actual point was of the boredom, but it was kind of probably that without even knowing what it was like that the learning of like the self-awareness and having that self-reflection, as in like my life's been amazing up until obviously this like the eating sort of started. Like I wanted for nothing. I got everything I had. We got to go on holidays, and even through like the football stuff, despite it being bad, like what I learned along the way, obviously about myself and the routine and the structures and the like being good enough up until a point. Like I passed every test. It's like I have got something, like, and obviously that's where I was slowly gaining like that control back from the eating disorder, and it was like I have to do something, whatever it is in life. I have to do like there must be something more than this. Like I want to be able to do things that are more than this, and that's it. It was kind of this the boredom. I think that the boredom. It sounds very flippant, but I think, like you said, I was a recluse. I was a hermit. I was nothing. The only relationship I had was with the eating disorder, and it was like this, just wanting a little bit more from life. And obviously it was there. So we moved out, and obviously got the place in Harwich, and then I got the job with Paul.
Yeah.
And obviously again, like, it was never like it was very gradual, wasn't it, in terms of the, like I say, like recovery or the implementing of like positive steps. But I guess like from your point of view, at what point, like I guess prior to, at what point did you start to see like almost like the old me, kind of like little sparks or little?
I mean, I think when you moved out of home, I think the catalyst was we were moving house, I think, or going to be moving house, but it was just so awful, wasn't it, living at home?
I think there's so many. I think that obviously what happened with Nan, and also like the building work done for her to live in that she never lived in. Like that annex was. It sounds like it was tainted, wasn't it? There was we couldn't use it for anything. Mum didn't want to use it for anything.
No, I mean, Mum would cook in there, or she would hide away in there, I mean, the number of times that Mum said that, and I didn't quite understand, or she would say, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do here, I don't want to be here, I could leave and never come back. And it was like, does that mean she's leaving me, or leaving the house, or doesn't want to be here as in on this earth? And that was a difficult thing. But so when he moved out, I think there was a bit of a release, but in terms of you being a bit better, like as in recovery, I don't think there was nothing visible that I could see. And we've got photos, and you've got photos, and you've posted photos of around that time when you were at networking events, and or when we did the DIY When we did that, even in that period, and we worked on the same project, and you were working for the double glazing company, we were doing the security, but even then, and that would have been that time, wouldn't it? I would have thought.
That would have been I'd have been 26, 25, 26.
So there was still nothing, to me, there was nothing about that said, James is on the mend. Then I think you said about going to Sheffield, and that was a because although you moved out and was at Harwich, we probably saw you every day.
Yeah, so I was 10 minutes down the road.
We probably saw you every day.
Probably still did me washing, me cooking, and me cleaning. And
the fear of you going all the way to Sheffield was that we
out of sight, out of mind.
That we won't see you. So any things that are going on with you, who have you got to share them with? Who's up there to support? I know Nick was there, but Nick was married and his own life.
These are all like new. There's a big thing to be like leaving and dumping on Nick, wouldn't it? He hasn't experienced any of this for the last. And you pitch up on his doorstep, and now he's going to be your dad. And that I was a bit scared really. I was scared about that. I think I was as well, but I think, like you said, although you may not have seen like the physical improvements, I think there was a lot of, and it's always the way, like. You can't change mentally. You can't change physically until you change mentally. Like the process needs to be like internal, and it needs to be like the thought patterns that you develop and that desire or motivation. Like it may not inherently come in the physical sense straight away, but it's like if your head's right and you have that ambition to do things, like it will eventually show across all aspects of your life. And I think
so what you just said then, what was the first? Exactly that. What was the first evidence that we could see that you were different? And I think it was when you met someone, a woman, and let someone into your life and opened up. And I think that was the first time. Not visually, you didn't look any different.
No.
But the fact that you shared,
I changed my route. Let someone in.
That you shared, you shared your life with someone. And that was probably the first evidence that that's different. That's different because you were so secretive and you didn't give a shit about anything. It didn't seem that that you were prepared to let someone in and consider them. And I think that was probably.
I hadn't thought of that.
The first time, in terms of evidence, that was the first time, I think, the first noticeable thing that was different over wherever long that was, 10, 11, 12, whatever the length of period of time that was.
That would have been close to 10, wouldn't it? It would have been 10, 17, 27, Okay. And obviously, I guess, like, how did you feel? I remember ringing you saying that I've lost her. And I bet that was a massive.
That was because you'd had, the resilient James, the James that could go into any situation. And then like you just sort of think, well, was that a facade? Was that just you putting on an act when you were a kid? Because you would do, and probably Nick pushed you forward. You would go into any situation. You'd always be the one up front. You'd always be the one. Can we do this? We want to do that. I remember sinking the pedalo in the Bahamas. You and a load of guys or kids or
kids club,
and then suddenly
Freddie Flintoff copied us. We trendsetters.
And then suddenly there you were in Sheffield, and you'd seemingly taken that first step of letting someone in, and you were different. And then my fear when that you said it's ended.
I think the nature and how it ended as well was brutal. I think was the easiest.
I think
easiest way.
I think you were in Sheffield and had nowhere to live then, because if you were living with this woman and then suddenly you weren't, and then you had nowhere to live, and then the revert to type was the biggest fear. It's like James is just going to go back to where he was.
I'm sure you and Mum had that conversation.
One step forward and probably 10 steps back. It was like, well, what happens now? And then like people come into your life for a reason. Unfortunately, you didn't make it down a couple of years ago when we celebrated our 65th, I guess it was, birthday. And I spoke about people coming into your life for a reason, and people come in for a short period of time, and they're there for that journey, and then that journey ends, and then you move on, and there's different people coming into your life, and there's other people that come into your life, and the carer that looked after Melanie Pat was just like incredible. She was an angel,
I used that exact word yesterday.
Did you? She came in, so Carol was just incredible that, you met this person and she was just, if it had been her mum, she couldn't have cared or loved her anymore. And I think you, at this point, so you had a woman come into your life that made you see things differently. Then you had a guy come into your life.
Yeah.
That whatever that catalyst was, that suddenly you've sort of was fixated, and we know you've got an obsessive personality.
Yeah.
So whatever you do, it's like to the nth degree.
Yeah.
And then suddenly you're embarking on this sort of gym thing.
Fitness,
Christ, where's that going to go? You know, where's our feel with that? It's like, well, it's a positive thing and it's a healthy thing, but
where's it going to
go? Yeah, where are the boundaries? You know, in terms of, and that would have been our worry initially with that.
Yeah.
But you just submerged yourself into that for however long that.
It was initially like 18 months when it like lived and breathed it every day. And I think what you said about the relationships with people, so like everything you do, whether it's work or like a big life event, they're all kind of like chapters in your book, isn't it? And people come into your life, and they may be for good or bad reasons that they come in, but they're always there to teach you a lesson. Whether it's about them and therefore other people, or they teach you about yourself. And I think that's obviously what she did. I think she was, like I said, there was no. I would like broken hearted at the time, but I think she was able to elevate me to a level whereby I was so used to sharing my life with her that it's like I wanted to find like another way of coping, and it was just it was just like this. It honestly came out of nowhere. There was no like, I'm gonna gym, definitely gym, and it was because it was in close proximity to where we lived, and I think when I first started going there, it was like to maybe if I got bigger, that she would find me more attractive or more masculine, or and then obviously then like speaking to obviously the guy that I befriended for years and his dad, like told him my story, and it was just like no, we'll help you. If you commit to us, we'll help you. And it was like I'm up for this. Like I didn't have a set like target in my head. It wasn't like I want to get to 15 stone. It wasn't about, it was just about replacing her with something else that was equally as supportive, comforting, and replacing that purpose. I think that's obviously what it was. It was the social element of being in that gym, like the 20, 30 odd people that I got introduced to over that time that become my gym family. And obviously seeing the results within myself were motivating. Like you see, like people say, like you catch the gym bug, and it is true. Like when you constantly like level up in the gym, it's like there's just this like internal, it's like a dopamine rush or adrenaline rush that you get when you, where you got like in work or like in life, there's always like obstacles to go over, and you either educate yourself, you learn about a certain thing, and then you apply it, and then you successfully complete that project, or like a recruitment thing, you obviously look at people and you weigh out what's the best option. That process it could take months, and on projects it could take years. In the gym it was daily,
wow. And
it was that daily, every day of getting that, I've done that, what's next, I've done that, what's next, and it was just that kind of feeling of winning. And for so long I didn't, but up until I was 17, how competitive was I? Nick and I were so competitive as kids, and I think like life's lessons, everything that I'd learned, and obviously I'd kind of focused it on a positive thing rather than a negative thing. And I say it was almost like all them attributes came into play, and obviously led me down the path that I guess it was the start of what I'm doing now. Obviously the fitness journey then led into the fitness industry. Obviously the things along the way with the modelling and the TV extra work and stuff. It's like when you have these points in time where, and I'm sure you have it as well, when I'll do a job, or you'll be on like the bus, and by the time I got told that I was working with Mo Salah, like the first thing I did, like messaged my mates, and it was just like sitting on the bus waiting to be called. It was like, how the fuck have I got here? And obviously, like I said, like that self-reflection and self-awareness thing. It was like, well, I've got here because of me.
People may give opportunities, but you have to. You're the one that's got to make it happen. You know, so.
And I think obviously that's one of the things, and the self-awareness, self-reflection is a massive thing. Obviously, like the ability to give yourself love, praise yourself, and like reward yourself for things that you've achieved. And then obviously it was the resilience. I think to know that you've conquered this demon that pretty much had me on the brink, and almost like in terms of, it wasn't just me, it was your life, it was your relationship, it was like marriage. It could have ended all of it, but for me to then like conquer that, like you said, it's almost like, if I can do that, it's like you can do anything in terms of that. To be able to regain control of your head, and I think that's obviously like the purpose of the podcast, to be able to showcase other people's stories across the mental health spectrum, whether that's from like anything, like anxiety, like PTSD, like trauma, depression, and I think like to be able to showcase people's stories and to try and to get people to kind of pick out little wins, or little like the recovery techniques, or the routines, or the things that they implemented to get themselves like back to where they were, and probably even better than when they were before it took a hold of them. It's obviously that's the whole point of the podcast, is to try and create this community whereby you're trying to champion people's wins, and it's not a way of like inflating that person's ego. It's about inspiring other people, and like you said, it's like trying to be that beacon of hope for someone. So whether that be through so someone that's coming into the, hopefully we create many podcasts and create a community whereby the people come in, and it's like my someone in my life is struggling with this, and they go through and they see, oh, there's like five episodes, there's 5 podcasts here with people showcasing their story, and it's like it's that.
I think people need hope. You know, they need to be able to dream and hope and pray that if I follow that, and it doesn't have to be following your footsteps exactly, you know, and you do things in a particular way, if you believe in the sort of, you know, the process, and but it is just having that hope. I think if your podcast does nothing else but give people hope, then we would have paid whatever the fee would have been, we would have paid it, I would have paid it, to just giving us hope that James will be okay.
I feel like I know you would have as well. I know you would have. You'd have done.
But you're doing it in terms of those darkest days, and I think even if you remember as a kid, I mean, all I've ever wanted is for you and Nick to be healthy and happy.
As long as you're happy, as long as you're healthy, I don't care what you do.
So profession, but you hope that your lived experience and the journey that you've been on, if that can help others, and it can give you an income and it can be sustainable, then what a way to live your life.
Yeah, like I said, since we've been doing like the PT and stuff, like, has it been like incredibly successful in a monetary sense? No, but in terms of like what it gives me, I feel like I'm giving something back, but then they're giving something back to me, because it just constantly not like empowers you, it showcases like my own recovery within myself, like to be able to work with other people, whether that be in a fitness point of view or from a mental health point of view. It's almost like you've gone full circle, and it kind of makes the journey, as toxic and destructive as it was, it makes it all worthwhile. And I think it's like a lot of people that probably been on similar journeys to me kind of feel obliged to pay it forward.
Well, I think because of you, we probably heard more of it than we would have done otherwise. I think because of your journey and the things you've shared and podcasts you've been on as guests with others, that you're open to those experiences that other people have lived, and I think if you're that person, then I can only go by your experience in terms of our experience with you. But if that person is in their bubble and they're unaware of the impact that's having on their family, if what you're doing helps other families to be able to short circuit that 10 years, and if you can reduce the time scale that people have to spend in those dark days,
I think that's it. I think that's I've even said that before. It's almost like, again, going from your own experience, like if not that it is, but if every person that has a mental health problem, it lasts for 10 years, if I can work with them, and even if you reduce it to 9 years, that's still a year that you give them back to not only that person, but their family, their friends, and it's like that those sort of things is, you see, in reality, you can't put a price on that. Because to be able to feel that their child has, let's say, you can't recovered, but is at that point where they're open to help, they regain control, and they've learnt them coping mechanisms that if life does go bad, that they have things to go to that isn't back down that path. And I think that's when you really know when life does test you, and it almost dangles that carrot of the relapse, and you choose to do something else. I think that's when you know that you have maybe not fully conquered it, because is it always there? It probably is. Like I said, like the control thing with food, there's still very much elements of that I still have in my life. Not to the point where it's destructive to, obviously, like my relationship with Becky. It's not obviously, but obviously there are still things there. So it's like, are you ever really cured? No, but I cope. I think that's the take-home message of all of this. It's just trying to learn a different way to cope with what's going on in your head, and whatever that issue's been. It's about trying to regain the majority of the control back.
But as a testament to that, to be, as a parent, to see your child, I don't know how far away from death, but seemingly very close to death, and as heartbreaking as that was, to see them recover and to see them on TV or whatever, or just living their best life, it's just like so rewarding. That it's that again is priceless. I think to see the hope and inspiration that you've become. So we just wish you every happiness and every luck with it.
Thank you. So obviously, I know it is ultimately the person that has to change, like themselves. But I think without a good support network around you, I don't think I'd have had that. I don't think I'd have had it in me to have done it solely by myself, like for myself. I think it was like that, to know that despite it being a very like dark time, I think to know that you've still got that I still had you in my corner. I think that was kind of like as much as I was a dick and I probably made your life absolute fucking hell, but like I think deep down I think I was still like the old me. So it's just
well, I think you've heard Mum say that
the old
might change, isn't it?
Yes, I think, like I said, it's a double-edged sword. Obviously, it's ultimately you that have to implement the changes. But I think without like external hope and support and love, I think it does make it like difficult. So obviously, as much as I'm doing all this for myself and obviously to help other people, I think it's also, there is an element of it for you and Mum as well. I think to be able to, like you said, the randomness of being on the telly and stuff. Like you never envisage that. Obviously, you said as long as you're happy and healthy, I think that's like the most important thing. But I think like to for where I was to some of the things that I've done in the last like 7 or 8 years of recovery, I said it's just like the universe does work in mysterious ways. Like I'm not not a very religious or spiritual person, but it kind of is like if you circled the drain and you've been at rock bottom and you do try and change your life for the better, people almost can see it and they will offer you opportunities, and then obviously it's on you to take them. But it's it's almost like the world universe like rewards you for almost getting your shit together.
And I think people can read, they can study, and they can share what they've studied and what they've read. But someone that's lived it puts it, I think, on a different level. So
yeah, I think the way that I just it's almost like when you're at school, you have like the theory side of things, and you have the practical side.
Yeah.
It's like depending on how your brain is wired, like having something tangible that you're doing, you're almost like you're educating yourself by doing it rather than reading it. So it's like the application is a little bit different when you're the theory base, you're reading it and then you've got to apply it, whereas the practical side, you're applying it while you're learning it. So like I think it's a very it's very much person dependent on where that person is on the spectrum of recovery. But like I said, to be able to, some people can't talk to doctors, some people can't open up to doctors. Like you said, to be that potential middle ground, whereby like I'm not a doctor, I'm not educated. And
you're not going to judge because you've been there, haven't you? You've been that person.
Exactly that
stuff. So.
Yeah, and it's like again, it's like the showcase of my story isn't to blow smoke up my arse. Like I am like proud of like how I've what I've done and what I'm doing now. Like I am proud of that, but I'm not doing that to make other people go, oh, go on, mate. It's not about that. It's just about saying about like, how bad things were and how divisive things were, and obviously I've learned a lot on this about from your point of view, as obviously as raw as it's been, and you get upset like a few times and stuff. I think it's that education from someone that's like lived it, experienced it, and then put positive steps in place. I think people are going to be far more like receptive of someone that's like done it and got the badge, rather than someone that's done it and got a degree. Like I said, it will vary between people, but I think people will be far more inclined, especially this. It seems like we're at the forefront of some movement. Like a lot of work does need to be done in regards to like improving the help available to people that are suffering with mental health problems. But I think that's obviously whereby people like-minded like me that have been on like similar journeys, I think what they're doing is like kind of valuable at this moment in time, whereby there's not enough support professionally, whether that's through waiting times are too long or financial constraints, where there just isn't the support there to offer to people. So if you can work with someone that's been there and done it, then they may find that even more useful. So yeah, that's why.
I would personally, I think we were talking earlier today about just business and life, and someone that's been there and lived through it, and they've got the battle scars from it. It doesn't mean that you'd follow everything that they did, but it does allow you to make a choice. You can listen to that person's life experience, lived experience, and cherry pick from that. That could work for me. I like that. I could do this. And if you give that and your podcast deliver that to people and they deliver hope, then it's definitely worth doing. And I thank you for inviting me to be your first guest.
You don't need to thank me. It was always going to be you, to be fair. So so it's been it's always a pleasure. But I think it's been very insightful.
Thank you.
So hopefully everyone's found it useful or like informative, and so hopefully this is going to be the start of the podcast series. So stay tuned for episode 2. So I'll catch you guys soon.
Cheers.